conversation with Bright Shitemi, who is the CEO of the Kikao movement, who has come, but because it's Thursday, he has said, nipatieni mic. Nipatieni mic. Niko na kitu nataka kusema.
Niongee nitoke.
Maybe we should actually call this segment Ongee kutoke. Ongee kutoke.
Shika mic, ongee kutoke. So, Bright has come. Good morning, Bright.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
This is where Fixing the Nation happens. One conversation at a time, like this one where we're about to have with you. And when we say every Thursday, by the way, if you'd like to shika mic, just you have an idea. What is this big idea that you'd like to come and present to the nation? And what do you have in mind? What is the idea? Why is this idea an important thing for us to consider? What does it entail? Does it entail us closing this country and everybody first of all going to Tanzania and then we come back to pate kama umepaka rangi? Or what does it entail? Will it cost us something?
You've stolen my shika mic.
Yeah.
We all go to TZ.
It's loading, Mariam. We've given a preamble.
Okay.
Sasa in a load.
TZ tuache wakipaka rangi.
Wakijenga alafu sisi tutaka kupaka rangi.
Okay. And give us examples of where this has happened before. So that's a format of our shika mic. And Bright Shitemi says, I have a proposal on what to do with corruption once and for all in this country. Is that true, Mike? Right?
Yes.
Shika Mike.
So thank you, Eric. The big idea, which should actually be common sense for us, but it's not, is absolutely zero tolerance to corruption. We need to review our law in a way that a life sentence is imposed on people who are convicted of corruption. And for those whose corruption offense has direct impact on people's lives, that means there's risk of loss of life or there's actual loss of life, there needs to be a death sentence. So that this person, you know, I think a constitution allows still, can be hanged, right? So we need to make corruption very, very painful. Because as it stands from the last reflections of our former president is that we lose 2 billion shillings a day to corruption. I heard CS Mbadi the other day say that if we were to just half that, we should be able to pay our debt. So that tells you, and why are we not doing it? So what is the government doing? If corruption is the big problem, why is nothing being done about it? So the impact is quite deep because right now you have a $12 trillion debt, 12 trillion shilling debt that the country has. 6 trillion of these is domestic debt. That means that as private sector, as regular Kenyans, we are not able to access loan facilities from our banks. Why would they give money to us when they can loan it to the government at 16 to 18%? So these are the problems that with corruption, where most of this money that is acquired through debt is lost to corruption, has long-term impacts on the economy and on the people of Kenya. This has been done in other places. I'll start with Singapore, where in 1965, that was around the same time we got independence. I think at that point, even Singapore was traveling to Kenya to benchmark. Lee Kuan Yew, was very tough on corruption. And in the very first few months of his tenure, a high-ranking minister who is a friend of his was caught up in a corruption scandal. And so that case provided a platform or a background for what Singapore is going to look like many years later. This person was convicted and he was jailed. So there were no sacred cows. In Kenya, we see a lot of sacred cows that a president or a high-ranking official can make a call to the DCI, to the investigating agencies and tell them, go slow on that case. So we need to have absolutely, and it's been done before. You can see Singapore where it is right now. In China, in Myanmar, in Indonesia, there is a death penalty on corruption. So it's sad that when some of these people come to Africa or come to Kenya, you hear of corruption scandals involving them. But when they go back home, there is zero corruption. So that means it's a policy issue that we can address at a policy level. And this change in policy will change attitudes. And because fish rots from the head, we need to start at the top. That if the president is involved, if the attorney general, if whoever in high office, they need to be convicted. And when they're convicted, they're jailed. So make corruption very painful. I drop mic.
Oof.
Shika hiyo.
Wow.
Radical.
Radical. I love it. I was looking at a few other stats just based on what Bright has said. It talked about Pakistan. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan received a 14-year prison sentence for corruption related to acquiring valuable plots of land. United States, former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Some of these were recently, we're talking about 2015 for some, Pakistan 2025. So absolutely.
But he's saying life.
Yeah.
Are you saying up to life, or are you saying life?
You're saying life
as the minimum.
Life in prison if you're convicted of corruption. A death sentence if your corruption offense can be directly linked to loss of life or risk of loss of life. And I'm saying that because in other cases you see money stolen from hospitals, for example. There is no medicine and people die because of that lack of medication. KEMSA scandals you heard about.
Yeah.
That is directly linked to a loss of life, right? You can see directly that stealing this money has led to these many people being affected, these many people lacking access to healthcare. That person should be
And
handled.
in Kenya, we haven't managed to do that because why?
Well, because corruption is embedded in the political structure. It is what makes it thrive, and it's become a toxic, cyclical, culture that is perpetuating the political establishment. So it is not in their interest that this changes. And so I would like to urge Kenyans out there that the problem starts with the political establishment because there is no political will to fight corruption. They pay lip service to this. There is need for us to wipe out that political establishment, come in with new leaders and change laws and make it happen.
Let me give an example. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Maria.
No, I was thinking. Corruption ranges from I gave the cop 50 bob to I stole 5 million of taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
All of us are doing life in jail.
No. Let me clarify. And this is because, I see countries or leadership as like when you're in a home. It's actually like a family unit. What your father and mother does, it's not what they say, it's what they do, is what a child does. So Kenyans do as the leaders do. Kenyans do as the policy and the environment allow. So if we make laws at the top, these are public officials, you're handling public money, entrusted, you are the person who'll be convicted to life in jail or death sentence. The regular person who's engaging in corruption will take cue from that directive from government that at a high level, if you're engaging in loss of funds, theft with public resources, you're held accountable. But at a small level, where you're giving your cop 50 shillings, the cop now understands there's a price to pay for corruption. Now, say a police officer is a public officer, right? They're there to serve the nation. If such a person is caught in such a corruption scandal, they need to be considered for life sentence. So that will then discourage people from receiving bribes and giving bribes. Yeah.
Go on, Eric.
I want to give an example of the recent high-level profile corruption case that we have seen. Ferdinand Dongo Waitito, a.k.a. Baba Yao, former governor of Kiambu.
Yeah.
In February of this year, he and others were found guilty of various charges in a 588 million shillings road tender graft case.
Yes.
The Chief Magistrate, Thomas Nzioki of the Anti-Corruption Court in Milimani, convicted Waitito on count 1 for conflict of interest, saying that he and his company, Saika 2 Estate Developers, were found guilty in counts 2 and 3 for dealing with suspect property. They found that he illegally obtained an indirect personal interest in the 25.624 million shillings from Testimony Enterprises Limited. All right? He was convicted alongside his wife, trading as Bienvenue Delta Hotel, on the third count of receiving 7.2 million shillings from Testimony Enterprises, and so on and so forth. So this is a case involving 588 million shillings. True?
Yes.
Mr. Waitito was sentenced to 12 years in prison or a fine of 52 million shillings. It's 12 years in prison or 52 million shillings in fine. Are you okay with that?
No, that doesn't make sense at all.
Why not?
So you have to, again, look at the impact of how much money is being stolen here. What can it do for the people of Kenya. 500 million shillings, for example. What can it do for Kiambu? That can run Kiambu General Hospital for almost 2 years, right? It can finance and make sure that Kiambu residents receive. So when this money is lost, what is the impact on the community? If it's a road, what would be the impact of that road? If it was done, that road was done in 2018, 2019, when that money was being stolen, what is the economic impact? So when you look at it that way, then you realize it's a bigger crime than what you're seeing. And when you impose a 50 million shilling fine on such an offense, it doesn't make sense to me, because that someone has been caught on one case. Probably they can afford that fine. If they cannot, maybe they didn't steal enough. But many people afford to pay these fines who are implicated in corruption scandals. And when you look at also the sentence, 12 years in prison, again, I think that is not enough, because you're a public officer, you're a leader of people, you're stealing public resources. There's a problem there. And you see, I think with these kind of sentences, it actually encourages corruption. Because if you know there's not going to be any price to pay commensurate to your crime, why would you not commit that crime? Yeah.
I wonder whether I can speak to, and I'm jumping ahead, I always think about the judiciary, right? And their ability to see this through. You know, when you think about case backlogs, etc. When you even see that there's the spirit of, I guess, confidence in the judiciary, because sometimes the judiciary is also co-opted. How does that also play in to this entire idea that you're presenting? What would the judiciary need to be to enable such things to happen?
Yeah, so truth be told, there's also a problem with our judiciary. There is elements in the judiciary that are corrupt and who enable actually corruption. But when dealing with such a problem, you have to start somewhere. And I think when you start at a policy level, I said the fish rots from the head. When you start at that level, where you make laws that make corruption painful, for the highest ranking people, that will cascade down. Now, when it comes to the judiciary, there's another need for a radical surgery of the judiciary. There's records, I think, with DCI and NIS collect intelligence on the time. So they know what is going on, right? Can we investigate these cases? Is there a proof? If you've been implicated in corruption as a judicial officer, I think that person needs to step away from their role and also be put in jail. But it starts from a policy level that as a president, as a government, our policy moving forward is the zero tolerance, and this is the price to pay. And then we start looking at institutions and making changes from there. Yeah.
He said death penalty for any corruption that resulted in the loss of life.
Yes.
Death penalty, dicey, one, unconstitutional.
I don't think so. Is it?
It is.
And also contentious. Globally,
And
there's a huge push to
yes.
do away with the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so what about the death of those who are affected? Does their life count? So there needs to be that argument, because you see the impact of corruption, it's actually very corrosive. When someone steals money, or for example, you've observed our society right now, what are the young people saying? That you can do anything for money, right? That is the impact of corruption. So if one loss of life of a deviant can change the attitudes of the entire population, why not? It's happened before.
Usually the issue with the death penalty is in places where they're trying to eradicate it. It's because there's so many cases where people were wrongfully convicted and they die. Or it's only they're just about to get to death row that they're appealing, and then new evidence comes up and it's like, you're about to kill someone who essentially was innocent. Here, where sometimes criminal cases can be a method of, just trying to go after someone or pushing agendas, etc. What's to say that we won't be executing people who may not have done anything, essentially, but they're just targets for whomever is in power at the time?
I think that's a good argument, and it's a possibility. And that's why for the fight to become credible, we can't have the same political system in place, right? Because when the fight towards corruption becomes political, then such things can happen. And so, yeah, I agree with your point. There's likelihood of abuse of power where people are wrongly convicted. Again,
But that is corruption.
that's
So
corruption
what
in
we're trying to
itself.
fight.
That's what you're trying to fight. That's what,
The system
This
is
is
the
what
problem.
we're trying to
Yeah.
fight.
The system is not working.
There are
You
so
could have
many
a law
checks.
that says
There are so many
you will
checks,
be
Mariam.
convicted and executed
Right.
of corruption
Yes.
above 5 million shillings. That's the law.
Yes.
Then
so who's
whoever-
engineering my jailing and all?
the powers that be, whomever.
In what stage? At what
It
stage?
could be at planting the case on your shoulder, making it look like, oh,
Okay.
Eric was given a contract to tengeneza the expressway chini from...
So kamata Friday, they come and pick me.
They come and pick you, they say, you were given 50 million shillings,
Yeah.
should have only been 25.
Wallahi hakuna kitu rara mimi sijui kitu kama hiyo. So DCI come and pick me, okay? Or ESCC. They investigate.
yeah.
ESCC must take that file to the ODPP, who has a decision to charge framework. Am I satisfied that the evidence produced here against Eric is sufficient to stand trial? Let's say you have corrupted that guy as well. Sawa. You go to court. You find an entire judicial system.
Yes.
Right? I am taken and charged in the Anti-Corruption Magistrates Court.
Okay.
Okay. There's magistrates case. Come, all of you, prove. Ni. Are you seeing this is another layer? Okay. And that's why we create all these layers, so that if one is corrupt, then the other one will stop it.
You hope so.
That is why we have the
What's
systems in
happening
place.
as you're going through this process, where you're fighting, you're going to the magistrate's court, maybe you're appealing again,
Yeah.
you know, if it
Yes.
was to silence you or to
Yes.
mission accomplished.
The reason why we have a constitution in place and saying that all these things should work is so that they work. The reason why we are fighting corruption this way is to make sure that this thing, nobody is gaming the system.
Right.
Okay? Now, let's even assume that there's this one time when somebody is gaming the system. There are so many other checks and balances. There's people like in a Bright and this Kikao movement will come out and say, the way this matter is being investigated, there are questions here. Raise issues. Mariam, raise issues and say, Eric, this evidence, Magistrate looks and sees, what have you presented before me? This is nonsensical. It doesn't stand. I don't find Eric guilty. Okay? And if magistrate is convinced that Eric is guilty, then magistrate says, Eric, from this day on until the last day of your life, utakuwa committee, ama kodiaga, ama shimolatewa,
Tumesema death
and you'll be
penalty
chapa in
kama
those
ni
laps.
5 meter and above.
Let's even...
Or not, sorry, if it's anything that had to do with
Yeah? Let's even say that
Also
mine
that.
did not cause those ones. It's just this
Okay.
one for life. Right? I still have an appeal. I can appeal to the High Court. You know, I'm in committee for life. I have all the time.
Do you have all the money
I think-
to appeal?
I don't have all the
I
money
think
to appeal.
also-
But then
Yeah.
this is where now this cannot happen in isolation.
Yeah.
It has to
Right.
happen with all these other things taking place, that we make sure that our systems work. We are fighting corruption so that our systems work. And that's why I look at it and I'm like, I mean, why not? Really, why not? There's a law in place, Senior.
Yeah.
Do we need to change the law for this thing to...
Yes, so the law in place, we're actually governed under the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. But it is not stringent. It is not the law that would dissuade you from engaging in corruption.
As it is right now.
As it is right now.
Okay.
Because you hear about the fines that are being imposed on some of these cases. Doesn't make sense, right? Because 12 years, 50 million fine. If I pay 50 million, I walk scot-free. What does that mean? And when you make this, the thing about corruption, just back to the earlier point, is that, say there's a theft of money. You know, money leaves a trace. Yeah. Either it went to a bank, whether it was a conflict of interest to your company. So it has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt by that trace that this person, Eric Latif, received 50 million shillings from Bright, and this money went that way. So again, at that point, I think then your fear of kangaroo courts and such like cases where there's influence, I think will be quite low. But also you look at the long-term impact. What is then the impact of not doing it? What does that mean for the 50 million, 60 million Kenyans moving forward?
Why are we corrupt, right? Because I'm always like, if we don't interrogate the why, there's no way we can move forward. So why are we corrupt?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And you have to ask yourself then, when we started out in 1963, were we as corrupt? Probably not. So why that? Like I kept saying, like I said earlier, it speaks to the value systems that we have. And value systems are derived from culture, right? Derived from behavior. They're derived from how, especially our leadership behaves. In any given country, the way the leadership behaves is how the population will behave.
Right.
Right? We pick it up from them. They're like our parents, right? We trust them with our country. So what they do is what we will do. When you go to hospital and there is no medication and you can give 50 shillings to someone and get medication, you'd be forced to, because corruption as an institution puts you in a place where you have to be corrupt. When you meet a police officer who is between you and a job interview, and you have to pay just 200 shillings, you're forced to be corrupt. So you're thrown into the system. So we have to change it at a structural level, at a cultural level, and it starts at the top.
Yeah. I was hearing you say in the 60s, were we as... Maybe it definitely looked very different, but I think we were. I think it started there.
Yeah. No,
amongst
the Kenyans.
Yes, amongst the Kenyans. That's true.
Of course, at leadership, it started there. Yeah.
And then also, to what you've said, and then it's socially normalized,
yes.
And then it becomes part of the culture. My other argument, I don't know if it's related to what Mariam asked, is now that we're where we are as Kenyans, even though we showed that we can shake an institution that doesn't serve us. That's what we showed last year in June, right? When we did the Reject Finance Bill protest. But I worry that there has to be such a collective push to want the same thing. And we are very far from there. As Kenyans, sometimes you think we're all on the same page. No. There's some people who are just like, you guys are talking so much. And you're saying this guy hasn't, just give him a bit more time. This is what irks me. It irks me beyond, because you realize we're not on the same page.
Patience.
And that's what patience. We've tried to be patient from the 60s, right?
Yeah.
What radical thing needs to get us on the same page?
I think people still downplay what happened last year on June 25th. There's a generational push for change. There's a push for transparency. There's a push for responsive leadership. And for the very first time in our history, we had young people without provocation, without being mobilized, going on the streets, right? No one went and mobilized young people and said, twende kwa streets. They came, social media and everything, in their millions, and they made their voice heard. We can see there's an attempt to redirect that conversation back to tribes, right? There's that attempt happening. But I think moving forward, and 2027 will provide a test.
True.
Are Kenyans ready for this radical change? Young people are saying, we are ready. Now, young people, are you ready then to be involved? Are you ready to vote? Are you ready to change? Because it starts with changing that leadership. Yeah. It's a problem that is enabled by an establishment that exists. Why would you want to change things if you're in power? If it enables you to have...
If it serves you.
It serves you, and you're in power and you make the laws. Why would it change? So it's again a challenge to Kenyans that it's on you. It's actually your decision whether this country changes or not. And young people, we made our voices heard. Can we step up to leadership, right? Can we change the way we see leadership? Because, you see, we've normalized corruption to the extent that someone who engages in corruption, it actually becomes a launch pad to political career. Actually, the bigger the money you steal, the bigger you become in politics. The biggest thieves become presidents, the less bigger thieves become governors, right? And again, because the politics are financed by corruption money, enabled by corruption money, then the ones who steal become the biggest leaders in our country. And it's a very vicious circle that we have to break. It's on Kenyans.
How do we...
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going on break, I don't think so. But how do we put this in law when, like you said, the people who are making the laws, it serves them, right? as things are. And I know I'd seen a question to that effect on YouTube. Someone who was asking, Anthony, saying, who will bring that bill in Parliament if those supposed to do so will be the first victims? No one is willing to make their own bed.
Yeah, and that's why, again, it's a challenge. We have to change the leadership, because this leadership will not make any laws that ties them. There's not in their interest.
We saw that the other day with the conflict of interest bill.
Yes.
In the Senate, which was, completely torn apart.
Yeah.
And the EACC complained. It went back to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly were playing to the gallery and saying, yeah, the Senate has really mutilated this bill because this is not how we passed it. And the president, when he was speaking in July last year, when he was making those addresses and making promises, he said, we are going to review this conflict of interest bill to make sure that, you know, there is no conflict of interest. No. This is the challenge that we have in when we have bad people along Parliament Road. That is, Parliament Road is kiini cha shida za nchi hii ya Kenya.
The root cause.
Kiko pale barabara ya Bunge. Naambia kweli. If we change that, and I agree with Bright, we change that, then we have a bunch of 345 people who will even agree to reduce the number of constituencies to 90. Okay? But they will do the job that they are supposed to be doing, which will be changing the law. Let me tell you what the current law on anti-corruption says. You've just quoted it. It's called the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. So this one defines the offenses and then also says how much penalty we give. Offenses. First, we have to define two things, agent and principal. Agent is a person who in any capacity, and whether in the public or private sector, is employed by or acts for on behalf of another person. Principal is a person, whether in the public or private sector, who employs an agent or for whom or on whose behalf an agent acts. So, here are the definitions of the offenses. Offense number 1, secret inducement for advice. Number 2, deceiving principal. Another, conflict of interest, improper benefit to trustees for appointments, bid rigging, protection of public property and revenue. The other offense here is abuse of office, another one dealing with suspect property, attempts to conspiracies, and then there are penalties. Penalties for offenses in this law. 1, a person convicted for an offense under this part shall be liable to, listen, a fine not exceeding 1 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years or to both. An additional mandatory fine if as a result of the conduct that constituted the offense, the person received a quantifiable benefit or any other person suffered a quantifiable loss, which ties into what Bright is also proposing in his law. And then they say the mandatory fine referred to here shall be determined by the mandatory fine shall be equal to 2 times the amount of the benefit or loss described. So if benefit or loss here is 100 million, then the fine shall be 200 millions. If the conduct that constituted the offense resulted in both a benefit and loss described in there, the mandatory fine shall be equal to 2 times the sum of the amount of the benefit and the amount of the loss. So we're basically saying it's 100. 200. It is 1 million, 2 million. And that's why we saw in the case of the current MP for where?
Waluke?
Yeah, John Waluke.
Yes.
That's why it went to 750 million shillings because we're doubling it. But still, jail term is, you know.
Oh, is that not the case in now Ferdinand Waititu's case?
Even in Ferdinand Waititu's case, you know, the actual benefit that they were being charged, that they were found guilty of, the money that came directly to them was about 7 million, about 34 million, like that. That's why now the fine is 50, Mike, because you're found guilty of what? This and the other. So the total fine for them was 52 million shillings. Because their nini was 26 million shillings. The amount of money that was found to have come directly to benefit
them.
And to be fair, for somebody like, to the earlier point, 52 million for some of these people is neither here nor there. So they don't quite feel the pinch.
Let me ask you, where's Waluke today?
See, he appealed.
But where is he? He's in Parliament.
Yes.
So that tells you the power of corruption and lack of political will in fighting corruption. You're convicted. Yes, you appeal. How does someone who's been convicted of a criminal act, of corruption, of stealing money,
hold public
office?
And thrive. It's the people.
Cool.
But the institution, how does
the institution
even permit that before you get to the people?
So let's even argue that the institution in this particular case was saying, you know, he has not exhausted all avenues of I argued this way in 2022. Fine. The law says exhaust. Let's give Janet, the right to exhaust avenues of appeal, and let's not say that before then that she shall stop enjoying the right. The people of, what's that constituency called again? Waluke's constituency. Just Google. The people did not have anything barring them from not electing John Waluke.
Yeah.
The people elect, the implementer of Chapter 6 of our Constitution of Kenya is the citizen.
Yeah.
We are the ones who, if we choose to say that, nilisikia Sirisia, yes. Nilisikia Fununu Bright akona ABCD, I will not give him my vote. Nilisikia Fununu. This guy cannot take me to court. And you refuse to vote for me because of Fununu. It is my absolute right as a sovereign to decide whether to vote for you or not to vote for you. The people of Sirisia had the absolute right to decide to vote for John Waluke or not. They chose to.
They did.
There's still the Umtuetu syndrome. That's one that played into it. Number two, I think the fear tactics that Moi really mainstreamed big time. Still, there's that PTSD. I don't know. Sometimes there's that thing of, if I don't do this, I don't know what implications there'll be on me. But whatever it is that we say to ourselves, I think we need to start telling ourselves a different message. That's the whole thing. To Bright's point, last year, young people made a lot of people look in the mirror. Like, whether or not you wanted to, you just had to ask yourself, where do I stand in all this? But I think the bigger concern is still that catch-up of those people who are not yet convicted. My fear is, even by 2027, they'll fumble. They'll still be on that thing for, lakini unajua, this person, he comes from where we are. That's why I'm saying there has to be such a radical shift where you even wake up and say, I'm going to do opposite day to day. The guy I thought I was going to vote for, I'm actually going to vote the right way.
The other one.
If we don't get there, the system also responds to where people are coming from. They gauge.
So our Shika Mike guest today is Bright, and Bright is the CEO of, and you'll tell us what you do at the Kikao Movement.
Yeah.
Bright is the CEO of Kikao Movement, and he's saying, we've got to go all the way and start fighting corruption properly. So if you are convicted of a corruption offense above 5 million shillings, you should spend the rest of your time in jail. And if you are convicted of corruption, and it is found that the amount of money that is involved here led to the loss of life for people, or risk of loss of life. We should not even say that we are going to spend our money feeding you for the rest of, and giving you blankets and chai in the morning and for the rest of your life. We finish with you now. We kill you, right? Death sentence. Do you agree? Do you not agree? You can call us and let's debate right here on that one. Jimmy says, my idea is getting robots to run government offices. This will eradicate corruption and reduce wage bills. Just look at the guest who's just left.
Choker.
Oh my God.
What did he say? What was the last bit? Oops. Wait, I have to read it. Clearly, you can't say it again on air.
Nixon Buru says, more effort should be put to address the root cause of corruption. There should be anti-corruption lessons right from childhood in learning institutions. Okay?
Yes.
So that is there.
The cultural, social
the aspects of it. I mean, the aspects of training and making sure that people learn from the very beginning and where we are at. And like a comment like Jimmy is saying, it's a frustration of wondering, do we have accountable people in office? Do we have accountable people in office? Do we feel that the people in office are doing the right thing? And how do we ensure that they do the right thing? Okay? And Jimmy, you went a bit overboard here in saying, let's look at that. Let's not. Let's not look at that. But what are your thoughts on this? Should we be pushing all gung-ho on saying, just spend the rest of your life in jail?
Yeah, we should. I think we should push gung-ho. And the biggest problem we have, and apart from just the corruption, we have so many other beautiful laws in other areas. Implementation is where we fail, right? And I keep going back to saying it's a problem of leadership. When the judiciary, when the political leadership, when the parliament itself is beholden to the executive, you have a system then that can never work for the Kenyan people. So there needs to be that will. There needs to be that environment that allows for even implementation of some of these laws. If you were to make that death penalty law today, and sorry, we still have, I don't want to mention names, but you know them, that need to go, they are still in power, nothing will happen, right? The case of Waluke, he's gaming the system. Again, that's how corruption thrives.
Waluke, right,
Yes.
though, Waluke followed the system.
Yes.
The system allows you to appeal. He filed an appeal, and he was successful on appeal.
Yes.
Okay, so the Waluke case is he's no longer a convict of corruption. He won the appeal, right? So this is also the distinction. And this is the beauty, like I said, the beauty of our system is that it allows you go to the magistrate's court, you're convicted, you can go to the high court and appeal, it's upheld, you can go to the court of appeal and appeal, right? And if all this still look at everything that you're presenting and they say, no, we agree with the initial conviction, then at least you've gotten your right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've gotten your right to be heard. If you get to a point where a higher court says, we are looking at the way the facts as they are, the facts as they were presented, the way the case was handled by the lower court, maybe that's what you're appealing against, and the higher court finds, we find that actually Jano was innocent from the very beginning, then that's Jano's reprieve, and that's why we have the law. So you can be convicted today, you can appeal, you can go home tomorrow. That's why we have a system. We should make sure that this system works.
Yeah.
And then just say, if you're guilty, so wewe enda ndani. Car for the rest of your life. If all those avenues of appeal agree, then you stay there.
I'm referring to gaming the system because as currently set up, you can take a court case for up to 30 years on appeal, an appeal delay. So can you put a timeline to some of these high-profile cases?
Yes.
Can you have a dedicated court that handles high-level corruption? And there's a timeline. So like the way we have with the presidential petitions, it's within 14 days a ruling has been made. Why would we wait another 10, 15 years to decide on a case where the loss of money happened 20, 15 years ago? Doesn't make sense. They say justice delayed is justice.
I like that. I like the dedicated court and the timeline. I think those are solid ideas.
Right.
We have the court already, the anti-corruption court.
Okay.
Right. It's the timelines that where the gray issues come in, because the courts will try as much as possible. In fact, we talk to judges and they'll tell you we do as much as possible to, if we start seeing hanky-panky games here by either of the parties, either the prosecution or the defense, then we say, look, you guys, I give you until this time. If you don't come, I'm throwing this case out. And we have seen actually the Chief Magistrate's Court and anti-corruption throwing some cases out and saying, you, prosecution, you said you're bringing witnesses. You've come here and you've told me it's due witnesses, due witness what? I am cancelling this case. You guys go home. But now we want us to have it 60 days.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're done.
On appeal. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
Quick and done. Who bears ultimate responsibility when there's chain corruption, if you get what I mean? Do you just go for the head?
Yeah, I think.
Or do you go for everyone in the system? If it's a 50 bob taken here that goes up to the OCPD or whatever, that chain of command all the way up, and it gathers momentum, and it's 50 to 1,000 to 100,000 to millions being collected in a day. Who goes to jail for that one?
Yeah, so I think, what is viable is, because you can't fight corruption at the same time all over the country. It's almost impossible. So you have to start at the top and then invest in awareness and the social, cultural change. The thing we talk about, do our children grow up in environments where they learn corruption from a very young age? What can be done even in school? I think in China, they have systems that teach them about values. In Japan, people grow up with value systems, right? Instilled, some of them by the government itself. And so that is fed through even the curriculum. So I remember when we grew up, we were very patriotic to country. Tulifunzwa, and by the time I was class 4, class 5, I was saying Kenya and Chiang, you know. So such things can be done to
the loyalty pledge, which
loyalty
we
pledge.
discuss at some point.
They don't do that anymore, yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, so
it was very strange when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. We need to revise it. But I hear what you say, because the more you say it out loud, the more you hear it, the more you practice it. I really struggle and grapple with the fact that social impact and social justice is not part of the curriculum from a very young age. Everything, whether it's addressing gender-based violence, whether it's addressing corruption. So children are growing up figuring stuff out by themselves, when really you could say, as part of our system, we're going to integrate social impact. We're going to integrate values. We're going to ensure that people understand what does it mean to live in a society that works. What does it mean also to live in a society that's violence-free? Because at that young age, if you're normalizing it, then I think it maybe forces you to think a little bit, you know, think twice before you can. I know a lot of people have talked about that, but in very isolated incidents. For example, if we're going to teach about menstrual, it has to be done this way. If we're going to teach about, but I'm saying, okay, let's have a lot of these issues, which we're grappling with now, because we know what they are. Let's make sure that the generation that's coming up is discussing it and understanding it. Some schools are doing things like life skills and trying to address it. But I think it has to be as intentional, almost saying, this has to be mandatory. You need to know so that when you're committing it, you know what you're committing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're 10, 15, 16, and you haven't really had these conversations, by the time you're 18, 19,
they just
it's fair
go over
game,
your
right?
head. Yeah, it's fair game.
Yeah.
When is the right time, in your opinion, to start doing this work of making sure that we're a corruption-free country? At birth, you know, at 5, at 10.
I mean, and look at Rwanda, for example.
Okay.
If you've ever been to Rwanda, and as an example on the aspect of social dynamics and how people behave. You go to Kigali, the borders don't behave like our borders.
I saw that, yeah.
I mean, just a few years ago, I'm sure they would have behaved differently. So there's an investment in implementation, there's an investment in lawmaking, and there's an investment in the social change in people. And it starts with the home at zero. By the point someone is born, the Rwandese know that there's a national cleanup day. I think it's happening monthly. That national cleanup day, you know, that is mandatory. You know, it imprints something in your brain about your environment, right?
Yeah.
We have a garbage problem here, right? With our governor who's not been able to do, or who's trying, I don't know, trying to do that job. But can also the people, you know, invest, or can the government and systems invest in making the people knowledgeable? Because some people even throw that on the road, are not aware. When you throw that thing, it will go and block the sewer system and, you know, have the floods. They don't connect all these things. So can we educate people? It starts from a very young age. Yeah, so right off when you start school.
Yeah, and it's what Sir Nixon Mboro is also saying. More effort should be put to address the root cause of corruption. There should be anti-corruption lessons right from childhood in learning institutions. That's what he's saying on YouTube. I like to always make reference to this case around Truong My Lan in Vietnam. It concluded its largest financial fraud case, right? So she, because first of all, the kind of fraud they committed was beyond. But as a result, under Vietnamese law, because she initially was sentenced to death, her sentence could be commuted to life in prison, right? Her husband has also been implicated, so he is receiving a 2-year sentence for money laundering. Other 33 co-defendants have also been convicted. So it's back to your question. The snake is getting life imprisonment. Everybody else who was part of it, including the husband, the co-defendants, they're all being sentenced. That's how you do it, I think, and they've shown. And they just say that because it was the biggest fraud case that literally affected the economy, they also just want to make an example of her. So they said, you're spending the rest of your life in jail, along with everybody else, the bank, the politicians who are implicated, you're all going down.
Everybody.
So it's doable.
Late Duke is asking. We need to change the notion of being given something to elect a leader. Changing the whole system and fighting corruption should start there. Because we get to the ballot, the premise of this idea of yours working is that we change the leadership.
Yes.
But we get to the ballot and it's, hey, Shika. And then they vote for that person. And that the people who obviously bribed to get into power will not vote, will not pass a legislation that criminalizes corruption to this extent. So now, how do you change that notion of being given something to elect a leader?
Yeah, so civic education, civic engagement is necessary. And it's supposed to be done by government itself. Government doesn't do much about it. And there's now players in the NGO sector, CSO world, who are investing in civic engagement in education. And it speaks to our value systems again. And this is a personal challenge to individuals. Like, what is your value system, right? Do you understand the connection between the leader you elect and the impact of your life 5-10 years in their tenure, right? So many people do. It's only that awareness is not collective and it's not brought down in a way that they can relate with. Many people, for them, because we're like a crab in a barrel, where we are all trying to get to the top. Right now in Kenya, because the system doesn't work for anyone, everyone is trying, even that person who's receiving the 100 bob, if they get an opportunity to become the MP, they will want to do the same thing. So it's that investment in that civic education, and that's what I know Latif was going to ask about what Kikao does. It's also civic engagement, civic education. Thankfully, the new generation of young people who are coming in are thinking differently. They're thinking, I don't know if you feel that, I feel that. I see that.
Very
100%.
strongly they're thinking differently. I wonder how effective the co-opting, because you spoke to it earlier, the fact that now we're being taken back to tribal cocoons and stuff. I do wonder how effective that will be pre-2027.
Yes.
How much we can resist it. Because it's a tried and tested method. It's worked over and over again. Are we being taken back there?
Yeah, if you're not careful, we will be. And Kikao is one of those people who will stand and try to beat that narrative. So with Kikao, we are working to equip the emerging youth leadership or the emerging non-political establishment leadership who we want good people in politics moving forward. Right? For a long time, even me, myself, I do other work. I do work in youth mental health. And I get calls every day of young people who are going through, again, problem of corruption and lack of employment, lack of opportunities, who are going through these challenges. But how do we bring all these people? Now we understand our power, young people more so. But how do we bring these good people into politics? We want Janet Bugwa to be Nairobi governor. Why not? What stops you from becoming Nairobi governor?
The swamp is what's scary.
You see? So that's the thing, because most of us, quote unquote, good people are staying away. We're saying we don't want to play that game. But we have to come collectively at scale and offer ourselves to the people. Then they'll have a decision.
So that you don't find yourself in there
Alone.
the swamp alone.
Yes.
They're like, hey, what's happening?
At scale and with courage. I think, as they said, the fear is gone. The fear has, in a very big way, been stripped away. I think last year, a lot of people pushed past the fear. And I think that's the biggest thing you have to maintain, because it's scary. Because you don't know whether you'll be implicated. You don't know whether it'll affect your friends, your family. But I think, you know, to Bright's point, at scale, and then fearlessly. And just say, you know what, we've tried fear before. Let's try fearless. And then let's just move fearlessly.
So Kikao is establishing these national networks at the grassroots level of people like Latif, like you. Like, we want you to step up to leadership. What should stop you?
Mariam and Latif, what is stopping you?
What is stopping? It's the same thing for me, honestly.
The swamp?
I can't imagine. I'm too straightforward. Genuinely, I really am. So if I go there, how would I make anything work when I am just like 1 + 1 is 2? Why are you telling me 4? What's happening? It's just that.
Now the Gen Z are saying we will vote for you. Bring your straightforwardness in 2027. That's what they're saying. So are you going to heed that call? Are you going to...
So even for the emerging leaders, maybe, I'm sure you've already identified some. How are you speaking to them about just moving with integrity, moving past the fear? What are they telling you?
So first of all, they're very fearless. Right? So we don't even have to talk about fear. They're very fearless. What we have to talk about is about capacity building, about them understanding what does it take. What does an MP need to do? What does it take to become an MP? In terms of real politics, what does it take to win the hearts of your voters? What are you going to tell them? In terms of from a brand level, you can't play the game the way they play it. For example, you can't go around dishing 200. You don't have that money, first of all. And then you become part of the problem if you do it. So how can we do things differently, realizing that we have the power of 70% of young people who think differently, right? Can we tap into that power?
Yeah.
Then, because 2027 is a toss-up. Like, you know, we know for sure that some of these people are not coming in. So who's coming in?
Yeah.
Let's bring that to the table.
Wow.
It's not the who's going out, it's the who's coming in.
Oh, that's
Yes.
good.
Silas Chesire agrees with some of what you've said. He says, what do we do? What can we do so that those very good opinions and suggestions are effected under our penal code? My suggestion is corruption and corruptors should be wiped out completely from the face of the earth. As you've suggested, touching on death sentence, ordinary corruption, life sentence, I support. Additional suggestions, corruption cases should not last more than 1 month from the time of the beginning of trial. Silas says, twende tukimaliza, 1 month inside Nyongwa, tomorrow we move on.
Why would you say it like that?
But it's a thing of just investing in the judiciary. You know, we need more judges. You can see every year, right now, we are cutting funding for the judiciary. We need more judges because they're overwhelmed.
Yep.
We need, so again.
My final pushback is just on the death penalty.
Yeah.
Where, as a world, we're moving away from it. Yes, indeed, and corruption is costing lives. But now, is it a life for a life? Or a life for lives?
I do not see why. I do not see why, if this thing made people suffer death, then the rest of us should continue supporting this person. Tunamnunulia sabuni, tunampatia maji, tunampatia chai asubuhi, tunampatia lunch, tunampatia supper, tunamnunulia blanketi, tunalipia stima. Why?
Is it our place to determine?
It hasn't been proven to be
That-
effective per
That's-
se.
that's a
Yeah,
whole-
it
that's a
really
whole
hasn't.
different-
Yeah, that's a
In China, it has.
different.
Yeah,
I can tell you
but
that.
the crimes persist. So you're saying even if they persist, people know what to expect. Because the reason why people are trying to vote against the death penalty is because they've realized it's not really creating the change that's needed. The
Also,
drug trafficking will still happen.
True.
The crimes will still happen.
And it's too high a cost when things go wrong. Like, if you've taken someone's life, you've taken it. There's no going back from that.
Yes. But let me bring up, a controversial issue if you have more time.
Yeah,
just a minute.
A minute. The Nduta case, that is the Nduta case in Vietnam, So the Asian countries put stringent laws against drug trafficking. One, because if you go check the history, it has to do with the British and the trade they were having with the British. And the British was trying to sell opium. And so they put in laws. And this is, for them, it's a cultural, it's a social thing. It's a thing about their sovereignty.
They're saving themselves.
They're saving themselves. So let me ask you, will there be another young person who will be trying to go to Vietnam right now, knowing the outcome? Probably not.
Right, well said. Enough said. Tosha. Thank you for
That was
coming.
good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking for the mic, for taking the mic, and for bringing out these brilliant ideas that you've done. Do you have something that you'd like to propose to the nation? Shika mic. We will be posting where you can send in your ideas, but also you can just call anytime. You can even record a WhatsApp Nation and say, this is my idea, nipatieni mic. We'll get back in touch with you. Okay, so what are the girls discussing today?
We've been Wada Winnie and Mikali. Winnie and Mikali on Your World discussing Ramadan dishes. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so I know that I don't think it will come on screen right now, but they are in a kitchen, it seems like. There we go. Those are the clips. And they're discussing Ramadan dishes. Wow, it's 10 a.m. and I'm hungry.
They're on their phones. They're taking
They're getting
of the
ready
food.
for the show.
It's
But that
food-
is your
it's
world.
food gram.
The phone eats before you do.
This is true.
Yeah,
It's a food gram.
If you didn't take a picture, it didn't happen. It wasn't there. So that's what they're going to be discussing in just a few moments on Your World.
And tomorrow, in just a few hours, we will be discussing the transition from grade 9 to grade 10 and the whole confusion around it. So we'll have the Digital Baraza tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Join us on our X page, on NTV, on YouTube and Facebook and at Nation FM. Have a lovely day. It's Eric Latif, Mariam Bishar and Janet Bogua. Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time. Many more conversations to come.